The estate sat on a hilltop, wrapped in mist and old secrets. The stone driveway wound up like a serpent, flanked by manicured hedges and statues of forgotten ancestors. Maya hadn't been back in over 2 years, not since the wedding. Her husband, Daniel, had convinced her this weekend would be different, that the cold glances, the subtle jabs from his mother and sisters, the way they spoke over her like she didn't exist, it was all in the past. She wanted to believe him. As they stepped out of the black SUV, the first thing Maya noticed wasn't the chilly air or the scent of pine, but the way Judith, her mother-in-law, looked at her, up and down, as if scanning for faults. "You've put on a little weight, haven't you?" Judith said, not even offering a greeting. "Must be all that takeout." Daniel forced a laugh, clearly uncomfortable. Maya just smiled, the kind of smile women learn to wear when they're tired of fighting battles no one else sees. Inside, the house was bustling. The staff was setting the dining room for 12, and the fireplace in the grand hall roared as a show of warmth that didn't extend to everyone present. Judith's other children were already there. Daniel's 2 sisters, Melissa and Claire, both of whom had made it their life's mission to remind Maya that she didn't come from their world. Maya had learned to keep her stories to herself. Her background wasn't glamorous. She was raised by a single father, worked her way through college on scholarships and 3 part-time jobs, and had made something of herself long before Daniel came along. But none of that mattered here. To them, she was a charity case or worse, a gold digger with good hair. "Still working in marketing?" Melissa asked over appetizers, her voice dripping with false curiosity. "Must be exhausting juggling. PowerPoints." Claire chuckled, sipping her wine. "But at least you get to stay home while Daniel provides." Maya swallowed her anger with a bite of shrimp cocktail. Daniel reached for her hand under the table, but it was too late. The words had already drawn blood. It had been like this all day. Judith had assigned rooms, of course giving Maya and Daniel the least favorable one. Tiny, with no view. Tasks were divided as if Maya were part of the staff. Help with the dishes, manage the playlist, ensure the wine was refilled. No one else lifted a finger. Daniel protested quietly, but his voice was no match for the overpowering presence of his family. That night, as Maya stood on the balcony overlooking the moonlit garden, she thought about walking away. Not from the weekend, but from all of it. From Daniel. From trying. From forcing herself to smile through clenched teeth. She had endured enough. But then her phone buzzed. A message. Just 5 words. From a private number. "They need to know now." Her breath caught. Her hand trembled. She looked down at the glowing screen, then turned back to the garden. The time had come. The next morning, Maya woke early. The rest of the house still slept, save for the staff who nodded politely as she moved through the kitchen. She brewed herself a cup of black coffee and sat by the window, her thoughts racing. She had kept her truth buried for so long, convinced that silence equaled peace. But peace never came. Only quiet humiliation. She had let them believe she was just the quiet wife. The outsider. The one who was lucky to have landed Daniel. They never knew who she really was. By noon, the guests had gathered again in the drawing room. Brunch was casual. Light pastries, eggs, gossip. Melissa was talking about a charity gala she had attended in New York. There was this woman, dressed like she'd never seen Chanel in her life, she said. "Can you imagine? At a gala." They laughed. Maya simply nodded. "Speaking of which," Claire added, "are you even involved in anything lately, Maya? We're still trying to figure out what you're passionate about." Daniel cleared his throat. "She's been consulting for some pretty big firms, actually." "Oh, please. Marketing." Judith interrupted. "That's just selling illusions." Maya smiled again. Only this time it wasn't forced. "Funny you say that," she said softly, her voice like a ripple before the storm. "Because illusions are exactly what this family is built on." The room went quiet. Even Daniel looked stunned. "What do you mean, dear?" Judith said with a tight-lipped smile, clearly thrown off by the sudden shift in tone. "I mean," Maya said, rising to her feet, "that I've been quiet long enough, and I think it's time we have a very honest conversation." At dinner. Her voice was calm, but commanding. She didn't wait for a reply. She simply left the room, letting the silence trail behind her like smoke from a lit fuse. Back upstairs, Maya opened the small black case she had hidden at the bottom of her luggage. Inside was a USB drive, a folder of documents, and a leather-bound notebook that carried truths heavier than gold. She sat on the edge of the bed and exhaled. She thought of her father, how he had been destroyed by someone connected to this very family, how his company was stolen, how he was framed and blacklisted from the industry he built. No one believed him, not until Maya did her own digging. And the trail led here, to Judith, to Claire, to the very dinner table where she'd been served silence for years. Maya didn't plan revenge. She planned truth. And now she had evidence. Tonight, she wasn't just going to confront them. She was going to expose them. As the sun dipped low and the chandeliers above the dining room flickered to life, the air turned heavy. Crystal glasses sparkled. Silverware was placed with care. Maya watched the table being set not for a meal, but for reckoning. Everyone thought it was just another dinner, but they had no idea what was coming. The dining room glowed with a soft golden hue. Judith had spared no expense to impress her weekend guests. Tall candlesticks flickered over bone-white china. Embroidered napkins matched the vintage floral centerpiece, and a string quartet played quietly in the background, their music echoing through the open French doors that led to the garden. Everyone was dressed to the nines. Daniel wore a navy blazer. Melissa and Claire shimmered in silk. Judith, of course, had chosen her signature burgundy gown. A subtle power move, as always. Maya? She wore black. Not the fun, flirty kind of black, but the sharp, almost severe kind. Tailored, minimalist, commanding. She didn't speak much through appetizers. She didn't have to. There was something about her that was different. The quiet, subdued daughter-in-law who usually melted into the background now radiated something else entirely. Presence. Judith noticed it first. "You're quiet tonight," she said, slicing through her arugula salad with the precision of a surgeon. "You're not coming down with something, are you?" Maya looked up, calm and unreadable. "No," she said, "but I do have something on my chest." Daniel turned to her, confused. "You okay?" Maya looked at him for a moment, long enough to soften her expression. "I will be," she said. They moved on to the main course, prime rib, seasoned vegetables, and tension so thick it could have been carved and served. Claire told a story about a European cruise. Melissa laughed too hard at a joke about someone who married beneath them. And Judith kept glancing at Maya, like a hawk watching a mouse that no longer runs. Then came the moment Maya had been waiting for. Judith raised her glass. "To family," she said. "For all its imperfections, we still remain loyal, loving, and strong." Maya lifted her own glass but didn't drink. "I have a toast too," she said, setting the crystal gently back down. "If that's okay?" The room went quiet. Even the string quartet fell into an uncanny pause, as if the air had shifted. "Of course," Judith said, cautious now. Maya stood slowly. Her chair barely scraped the floor. "To truth," she said, "because without it, there's no real family. Just performance." There was a beat of silence. Judith blinked. Melissa tilted her head. Claire smirked, the way people do when they think they're being toyed with. Daniel, however, had gone rigid. "Maya, what's going on?" he asked. She reached into her purse and pulled out the small leather-bound notebook. She placed it gently beside her wine glass. Then, from the same bag came a slim envelope. She passed it across the table to Judith. Judith hesitated. "What's this?" "Open it." Claire rolled her eyes. "Oh, God. Is this a dramatic dinner speech? Because—" "Claire," Maya interrupted, her voice like steel. "I'd suggest you listen." That stopped everything. Judith opened the envelope. Inside were 6 printed pages. On the first page was a familiar name, her own, followed by an account number. The second page was worse. Judith's face went pale. This is from nearly 15 years ago," she said, her voice faltering. Maya nodded. "Correct. A trail of offshore transactions, shell companies, and falsified records. All connected to a hostile acquisition that destroyed a startup owned by a man named Raj Mehta. Melissa frowned. Why does that name sound? He was my father, Maya said softly. Your family crushed him. Claire laughed, but it sounded hollow. Wait, are you trying to pin that ancient business deal on us? That wasn't even. Judith, Maya said. You were on the board of Lexington Equity. You and your late husband orchestrated the acquisition. My father had developed a software system 2 years ahead of its time. Your firm not only stole the code through an internal plant but buried him in legal fees until he had no choice but to sell. For pennies. Judith's lips moved, but no words came out. Daniel looked stunned. Wait, what? Maya pressed on. He spent the last 6 years of his life fighting to clear his name. He died with nothing. Bankrupt, heartbroken, and every time I sat at this table, I watched the people who did that to him pretend to care about legacy. Claire scoffed, defensive now. You expect us to believe you uncovered all that on your own? I didn't, Maya said. I had help, legal help, investigators. I've been working on this for almost 3 years. I kept my name off everything, built a case quietly, carefully, and then, she paused, reaching into her purse one last time. A small USB drive. This has everything, she said, placing it on the table like a weapon. Emails, witness interviews, signatures, audio files. I even found one document, dated a week before my father's company was raided, where Judith here approved a buyout plan under a fake holding company. Judith stood up, trembling. You don't know what you're talking about. Maya looked at her, eyes steady. You didn't just ruin a man. You ruined a family. And now you sit here, passing judgment, treating me like a servant in your house while you sip wine and pretend you're untouchable. Melissa looked between them, panic in her eyes. Mom, is this true? Judith didn't answer. Instead, she sat back down slowly, her breath shallow, her gaze unfocused. Daniel leaned forward, his face white. Maya, why didn't you tell me? Because I wasn't sure I could trust you, she said. You never stood up for me before, and I needed to know whether you were his son or hers. Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it again. The room was spiraling now. Claire stood up, her chair nearly toppling over. Melissa looked ready to cry. No one touched their food. Maya stayed standing. I've already sent copies of these documents to 3 law firms, she said. One of them has a long-standing grudge against Lexington. They're salivating. There are press releases drafted. Financial journalists on standby. But I wanted to give you a choice first. Judith looked up, her voice now small. What choice? Maya picked up her wine glass, held it in the air. Public exposure, she said. Or private reparation. The words hung in the air like a knife. As she sat back down, the music resumed faintly in the background. But the table would never be the same. The silence in the dining room was eerie. Moments ago, laughter echoed against the chandelier-eared ceiling. Now it was as if the room had been vacuum-sealed, stripped of air, warmth, and illusion. Maya's words hovered like storm clouds. The weight of them had shifted the air, and everyone felt it. Judith sat stiffly at the head of the table, her face pale, her fork untouched beside a once sizzling fillet now cold. Across from her, Daniel stared at his wife with wide, disoriented eyes. Claire had left the table entirely, retreating to the sunroom. Melissa clutched her wine glass, knuckles white. No one touched the USB drive. No one touched Maya. It was Judith who finally spoke. You come into my home and accuse me of corporate theft and character assassination? She said, barely above a whisper. Do you even realize what you're saying? Maya didn't blink. I do. Judith's voice sharpened. Then let me be clear. You're mistaken, misguided, or worse, manipulative. Daniel leaned forward. Mom! No, Judith snapped. She's trying to destroy this family. No, Maya said softly. I'm trying to tell the truth, and maybe for the first time in your life, Someone is refusing to stay silent under your roof. Judith scoffed. So you wait until we open our home to you. Welcome you to our table. Maya cut her off. You never welcomed me. You tolerated me. And you disrespected me. Relentlessly. Daniel tried to speak, but Maya raised her hand. Her eyes met his. Did you know, Daniel? She asked. Did you ever wonder why I was so careful when I met your family? Why I never talked about my father? Why I never allowed myself to belong here? He looked lost, as though a riddle he had never tried to solve was suddenly standing in front of him, demanding to be answered. I didn't know, he said. Not like this. Maya nodded, her voice calmer now. I suspected your mother was involved, but I wasn't going to act without proof. I never wanted revenge, Daniel. I wanted understanding. I wanted peace. But when people show you again and again that they see you as disposable, something breaks. Melissa finally spoke. Her voice was hoarse. So what now? She said. You destroy everything? You go public and turn our family name into dirt? You ruin Daniel's career too. Maya turned to her, eyes cold but clear. I'm not here to ruin your name. Your mother already did that. I'm here to decide whether it becomes public knowledge. Claire walked back in, arms crossed, her phone in her hand. I've already texted Dad's lawyer, she said. This is slander. If you release anything, we'll bury you in court. Maya didn't flinch. You can try, but the law's not what it used to be, and I've got whistleblower protections on my side. Plus, a few people inside your former company who are tired of the silence. Claire paused, just a beat, long enough for Maya to know she struck a nerve. Daniel finally stood. He looked down at his wife, then across the room at the people who raised him. I need to speak to Maya alone, he said, voice firm. Judith opened her mouth, but for once, stayed silent. In the upstairs study, Daniel closed the door behind them. The air was still, thick with the echoes of everything that had just been said. Maya, he said quietly, why didn't you tell me? You should have. I wanted to, she said, so many times, but I knew the moment I did, everything would change. You love your family, and I didn't want to make you choose between them and me. Daniel sat on the armrest of a leather chair, running his hand through his hair. I don't even know what's real anymore, he muttered. Maya stepped closer. What's real is that your mother destroyed my father's company, my childhood. She looked him in the eye during a negotiation and still signed the paperwork that gutted his life. And then she raised daughters who mock people like me and act like cruelty is sophistication. He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in weeks. Not as his wife, or as the quiet woman his family dismissed, but as someone strong, steely, unbreakable. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't protect you. Maya's face softened slightly. I didn't need protection. I needed a partner. He nodded. And what do you need now? I need to know where you stand, she said. Because either you walk downstairs with me and tell them the truth matters more than their reputation, or I walk out of this house and burn it down with every piece of evidence I've got. Daniel stood slowly. He took her hand. Back in the dining room, Maya and Daniel returned together. Claire rolled her eyes. Judith remained seated, arms folded. Melissa looked away. We've talked, Daniel said, and we've made a decision. Judith raised an eyebrow. We? Yes, Maya said. We. Daniel stepped beside her. You've all spent years pretending to care about legacy, business, and loyalty, but none of that means anything without truth. I'm not covering this up. If Maya decides to go public, I'll support it. Claire scoffed. Do you hear yourself? Loud and clear, he replied. You treated her like she was beneath you, but the truth is, none of you are half as brave as she is. The room went still. Judith looked up at her son, pride stripped from her face. I see, she said quietly. You've chosen her. I've chosen integrity, Daniel replied. And if that threatens your empire, maybe it wasn't worth much to begin with. Melissa stood. Wait, can we talk? Not like this. Not all at once. Maya, maybe we work something out. Privately. Maya studied her for a moment. There was fear in Melissa's voice, yes, but also something else. Recognition. I'm listening, Maya said. But I don't negotiate with shadows. Judith looked like she had aged 10 years in 20 minutes. Her mouth opened, then closed. She pushed back from the table, her chair scraping the floor. This dinner is over. But Maya just smiled. No, Judith, she said. It's just beginning. The morning after the dinner felt like a funeral. The house, usually humming with Judith's curated chaos, was quiet. The clinking of silver, the drone of classical music, the forced pleasantries over croissants and coffee, all gone. Judith hadn't come down from her room. Claire had left early without a word. Melissa sat at the breakfast table, scrolling nervously through her phone, her untouched tea going cold. Maya stood on the balcony of the guest bedroom, watching the fog roll across the gardens below. Daniel joined her quietly. They're unraveling, he said. Maya didn't turn. They should. Maybe then they'll understand what unraveling feels like. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he slipped an arm around her waist, tentative, grateful. I meant what I said, he whispered. I'm with you, no matter what happens next. She nodded, then turned to face him. It's not over, Daniel. There's more. I know there is. He looked at her, confused. More than the evidence you already have? Maya walked back inside and picked up her phone from the nightstand. She opened her email and held it up. Someone contacted me this morning, she said. They used a fake name, encrypted address. But they said they used to work for Lexington. They want to talk. Daniel took the phone and read the message. I know who your father was, and I know what they did. You've only scratched the surface. If you want the whole story, meet me, today. 3 p.m. Griffith Cafe. Come alone. He looked up at her. It could be a trap. I know, she said. But it could also be the final nail. By 2:45 p.m., Maya was sitting in the back corner of Griffith Cafe. It was a small, sleepy place, nothing like the sterile boardrooms where Judith had done her damage. Sunlight poured through the windows, and the smell of roasted beans and cinnamon rolls filled the air. But Maya's mind was a world away. At exactly 3:02 p.m., a man entered. Late 50s, gray at the temples, wire-rimmed glasses and a coat that had seen better years. He moved with a quiet unease, like someone used to looking over his shoulder. He approached her table. Maya. Yes. He sat without asking. I'm Peter Klein. I was a financial analyst at Lexington. I worked under Judith for 6 years. Maya leaned forward, voice low. Why reach out now? Peter rubbed his hands together, the kind of nervous tic you develop when you've lived with secrets too long. Because you stirred the water, and people who were silent before are watching. Judith didn't just destroy your father. She built an entire business model out of it. Maya's eyes narrowed. Go on. Peter took out a flash drive. This has records. Audio recordings. One in particular, your father during a phone call with Judith. He begged her to pull back. He told her if they went forward with the acquisition, his investors would abandon him. She told him it was just business. Then she laughed. Maya swallowed hard. Peter slid the flash drive across the table. There's more. They did this to 5 other startups. Your father's was just the first. Judith used the same strategy every time. Build trust, infiltrate, exploit weaknesses, and buy out when the company was desperate. Maya felt her heartbeat in her throat. Why did no one stop her? Because no one knew where to look. Or if they did, they were paid not to look. But you... He looked her dead in the eyes. You're different. You've exposed the first crack. And it's spreading. Maya hesitated, then took the flash drive. Why now, Peter? Why me? He gave a weary smile. Because when I heard your voice at dinner, leaked from someone's phone, it sounded like your father. Calm, steady, but unshakable. I thought, maybe she finally met someone she can't destroy. That evening, Judith summoned Maya to the study. No one else was present. The fire crackled behind Judith, but her expression was colder than ever. "Let's not play games," Judith began. "You've made your move, and now I'm making mine." Maya said nothing. "I know who you met today," Judith said. "Peter Klein. He's a disgraced former employee with a vendetta and a drinking problem." Maya crossed her arms. "You're scared." Judith's eyes flared. "I'm furious." "No, you're scared," Maya repeated, "because the walls you built with money and manipulation are finally shaking." Judith stood. "You're clever. I'll give you that. You played the long game. But let me ask you something, Maya. What's your endgame? Do you really think the world cares about a sob story from 15 years ago?" Maya stepped closer. "No, but it cares about truth, about pattern, about the rich cannibalizing the vulnerable. You didn't just destroy companies. You destroyed lives." Judith scoffed. "And what do you want? Justice? Revenge? A payout?" "I want you to admit what you did," Maya said. "To me, to Daniel, to your daughters. And I want you to pay restitution to the families you hurt." Judith laughed, sharp and bitter. "You think I'd do that?" Maya pulled out her phone. "Then I guess the media will be hearing it first." Judith's face cracked for the first time. Not rage, not contempt, fear. "I'll call my lawyers," she whispered. "Do that," Maya said. "You'll need them." Later that night, Maya sat in the guest room again, the flash drive open on her laptop. The audio began crackling, distant. "Judith, please. I'm asking you. This will ruin everything I've built. Raj, it's business. You'll land on your feet. You're smart. These are people's lives. Then maybe they should have been better at protecting them." Then the laugh. "Lo, I see." Maya sat back, tears burning in her eyes. It wasn't just proof. It was prophecy. 2 days later, the world began to shift. The story broke on a Wednesday morning. Headlines blared across business news sites, independent investigative channels, and social media platforms alike. Whistleblower exposes ruthless acquisition tactics by Lexington founder Judith Whitmore. Ex-daughter-in-law leaks audio that could cripple legacy conglomerate. The dinner that sparked a corporate firestorm. Maya didn't release everything, not yet. She gave the press enough. The most damning clip, portions of the financial records, and Peter Klein's sworn affidavit. Enough to build pressure. Enough to trigger investigations. Within hours, Lexington's stock plummeted. By evening, their PR team issued a flat denial. But the internet doesn't wait for rebuttals. By the next morning, several former employees had come forward. Their stories matched Maya's. Daniel watched it unfold like a man surfacing from deep water. He fielded dozens of calls, investors, old college friends, reporters. He told them all the same thing. "I stand with Maya." And he did. For the first time since they married, he stood in the fire with her. That night, Judith held a private family meeting. Maya was invited. She accepted. They met not in the grand dining room, but in the conservatory, surrounded by walls of glass and creeping ivy. Judith sat like a monarch preparing for exile. Poised, bitter, but shaken. Claire spoke first. "We've spoken to the attorneys. They say we can fight this. Get an injunction. Sue the press." Maya smiled softly. "You still think this is about control?" Melissa shook her head. "It's not. It's over. The board is calling for an emergency vote to remove Judith from the executive team. Investors are fleeing. Half our vendors are freezing contracts." Claire's face turned red. "Because of her lies." "No," Daniel said. "Because of Mom's truth." Judith turned to him, eyes glassy. "You would let her tear this family apart?" Daniel took a breath, steady and clear. "Mom, you did that. Years ago. You just wrapped it in tablecloths and called it tradition." Judith stood, trembling. "You're choosing her. After everything I built." Maya stepped forward. "I never wanted your empire, Judith. I just wanted you to acknowledge what you did. To me, to my father, to every small founder you crushed without blinking." Judith's lips quivered. For a moment, Maya thought she saw regret flicker behind the frost. "You have no idea what it took to build what I did," Judith whispered. What I sacrificed. I do, Maya replied. That's the problem. You sacrificed people and called it success. A long silence followed. Then Judith sat down, suddenly older, smaller. What do you want? She asked. Maya looked around the room. I want this family to reckon with itself, she said. To stop pretending money erases everything. I want you to fund a reparations trust for the companies you destroyed, starting with mine. I want a public statement accepting responsibility. And I want you to step down. Not quietly, but fully. Judith laughed once, dry and hollow. You want my crown. Maya didn't smile. I want it buried. 2 weeks later, Judith Whitmore stepped down from Lexington in a public statement. She called it a time of reflection. She offered no apology, no direct admission of guilt, only a vague acknowledgement of past misjudgments and unintended consequences. It wasn't enough for the press, but it was enough to open the floodgates. Former employees, silent founders, even Peter Klein's former supervisor all spoke out. The company was under investigation. Stock was still spiraling. But for Maya, it was never about the money. It was about truth and legacy. In a quiet park overlooking the city, Maya stood with Daniel beside her father's old bench. An unassuming slab of wood with a brass plate engraved. Raj Patel, dreamer, builder, father. She placed a single white lily on the seat. Daniel took her hand. He would have been proud. I hope so, Maya whispered. I hope he sees that I didn't just survive. I fought. He squeezed her hand. I don't want to go back to that house, she said suddenly. It's like walking through a mausoleum built on denial. Then we won't, Daniel said. We'll build something new. They stood in silence, the wind brushing through the trees. Finally, Maya turned to him. Do you think families like that can ever truly change? Daniel looked back toward the city skyline. Lexington's towers now standing dim under a shadow they created. Not all of them, he said, but maybe one person at a time. Final scene. Months later, Maya sat on the stage of a tech conference. Not as a guest, as a keynote speaker. She stood in front of thousands of entrepreneurs. Many from marginalized backgrounds. Many who had heard her story and seen a mirror. She told them everything. Not just about Judith. About fear, resilience, the long war of dignity in rooms built to exclude you. And as the crowd rose in applause, Maya smiled. Not in triumph, but in freedom. The truth had taken years to rise, but now it stood taller